the next section, we'll move on to our compound operations. These are operations that handle multiple pieces of data in a single line. And the other item we'll cover with this as well is the increment and decrement operators. So they function along similar lines. So the main ones we're looking at here are times get or times equals, divide get or divide equals, plus gets or plus equals, and minus gets or minus equals. So with these operations, they function as a shorthand. What they do is, instead of having to use, like if you have your variable here, and you want to add 2 to it, instead of having to say that your variable gets variable, and this is so that you have whatever value is in here plus 2. The shorthand version of that is to do your variable plus equals 2. This line here acts like this line, but it saves a little bit of typing. Doesn't seem like too much, but when you're writing a long program, if you're doing something like this often, it saves quite a bit in the long run. And with the increment and decrement, operators, it functions on the same kind of principle. There's a pre version and a post. For the increment, the pre version, it's plus plus variable. The post version would be variable. This on another line. Just make sure it's clear. Is variable plus plus. This is the post increment. Same thing for decrement. You have the pre version. And the post version. So the main difference with these, the pre, if you're using it in an equation, is going to give you the new value of the variable to use in your equation. The post version is supposed to increment it after everything else. So even if it's used in a statement, the value doesn't change until after that statement has executed. So if you were to do something like a console write line and use the post-decrement or post-increment or decrement operator, you would not end up displaying the new value, you would end up displaying its old value. And we'll go ahead and throw some code in here. We'll go ahead and throw some code in here quick just to demonstrate this. We'll demonstrate all these operations. So for this one, we'll start with a float variable. And I'll just call it current value. When you're writing a program that's a little more meaningful than just demonstrating the basic syntax, you want to use a better naming convention. You want to name your variables something meaningful so that almost like your code reads like a book, so that someone, just to make it easier to read through your code. If you remember up here, when I was in the Boolean, if I was creating a Boolean that was controlling my program running until the user chose to exit, something like that, I would use a loop with a Boolean, and it'd be something like this, where its program is running or program running. That way the while loop would be like while program is running, so it just reads. And basically the code becomes self-documenting that way. For this, there's nothing meaningful I can really choose to use as a name, so I'm just going to use current value. But later programs, you'll see we'll get better with that. Here we're going to do some write lines and modify the value as we go. Again, we're going to use string interpolation. Show the current value. Show the operation we're going to do. Show the value we're going to use to modify it with. And then actually do or make the change. And you'll see with these compound operations, we can use them inside of statements. Because this is an assignment, the current value the changed value will persist after this write line executes. So we're going to go ahead and copy this line so we can use it. Highlight it better. So that's showing addition. We'll do show subtraction. In this case, we'll take 1 out. Make sure we don't leave any typos in there. And now we'll show the multiplication. And then we'll also add code for division. For this one, we use 4. Sorry, we use 4. So now, to demonstrate good practice of making sure that we keep running our code to see what make sure we haven't made any mistakes. We'll run that, and we see down here now, after our integer division, 0 plus gets 2 is 2, 2 minus gets 1 is 1, 1 times gets 10 is 10, and 10 divided by 4 is 2.5. In this case, we got 2.5 because we are using a variable that is floating, so even though we're dividing by an integer of 4, we still get floating point operations, and that gives us the actual result of 2.5. The next item, we'll go ahead and show how the increments and decrements work. So we'll use a console write line, using string interpolation here. So we're incrementing it in a statement. Yeah. And that results in the value of now we'll go ahead and take this line because we're going to use it again. I'll hide the fact programmers are lazy. Anywhere we can save on typing, we'd love to do so. So in this case, we're going to do the post-increment. We'll show what the current value is, then we'll do the operation and display it. And we'll do the same thing with the decrement operators. And I forgot to change the pre. That is a pretty common programming error. called a copy and paste error. It's one of the easiest ones to make when you are duplicating code, which is also why you'll see techniques later to reduce code duplication. So as much as possible, you want to try to write code once and then use it wherever possible, or reuse it. So in this case, we'll do the pre-decrement, and on this one, we'll do the post-decrement. And I'll just add a comment here. Increment operations and decrement ops. Now sometimes, depending on how messy or hard to understand the code is, it's nice to have comments in here. These are ignored by the compiler, they're just there for anyone looking at the source code. Ideally, every program would be commented so they're easy to understand. I know that they can kind of be a pain to do, a pain to maintain. I don't expect a lot of commenting, but I do expect you to try to write your code so it's readable, so that commenting isn't required. If your code is too ugly, I might actually ask you to start commenting it, so keep that in mind. So with that, let's go ahead and run again. And now, after all of our other operations, you'll see the increment operations. So, pre-increment on 2.5, we get 3.5. Post-increment on 3.5, you see it still says 3.5. But if you look at the first decrement operation, and there you see a copy and paste error, you need to change that to decrement. You see the value is 4.5, so it did change it after it printed here. And doing the pre-decrement, it does go back to 3.5. And doing the post-decrement, says we start at 3.5, displays 3.5. We didn't show it again, but you would know that the result now is actually 2.5 after this statement. So we'll go ahead and finish this line. Let's see, we'll go in here, fix this. So we will finish those. And the other thing we're going to do, because you can see where it's getting messy having all of the lines printing out, is we're going to add something here called a console clear. This will clear everything that's been displayed and start again at the top of the screen. So even though the other statements are going to run, we won't see them. The only thing we'll see is the results here. And you see how it kind of flashed there and then was gone. Now we have just the last section we were working on. It makes things cleaner, a little easier to look at. As we go through the program, for this set of lessons, I will keep working in the same file. I would just move this comment, or this command, I'll move it down in the program so that the screen stays clear. We can see what we're working on currently. I'm just adding a comment that this will hide everything that was done before that line. Something where we can always comment it out or take it out and see the entire program. In this case, going forward, all we want to see is what we are currently working on.